Listen, I don't care what anyone says. What happened at WWE Day 1 2022 was absolutely criminal, and somebody needs to be held accountable for this disaster. Becky Lynch, the woman who supposedly revolutionized women's wrestling, got embarrassed in front of millions, and the WWE universe has been lying to themselves ever since about what really went down that night in Atlanta. They handed Liv Morgan a championship she had no business winning, turned one of the greatest wrestlers of this generation into a joke, and then had the audacity to pretend like this was some kind of feel-good underdog story. I'm about to expose the truth about this match, and trust me, you're not going to like what you hear. But before you rage quit this video, stick around because the evidence is undeniable, and by the end, you'll understand why this match destroyed the credibility of the Raw Women's Championship for an entire year. You know what really gets me fired up? The fact that everyone wants to celebrate Liv Morgan's Cinderella story without acknowledging that this match was booked like a complete train wreck that disrespected everything Becky Lynch built over the previous year. But we'll get into that. First, let's set the stage for what should have been remembered as one of the most important women's championship matches in recent WWE history, but instead became a cautionary tale of terrible booking decisions. WWE Day 1 2022 was supposed to be a fresh start for the company. New year, new beginning, new opportunities. The State Farm Arena in Atlanta was packed with over 15,000 fans ready to witness history. But what they got was a match that perfectly encapsulated everything wrong with modern WWE storytelling: rushed narratives, unearned championship changes, and the complete sacrifice of a top star's credibility for a cheap pop and a moment that would be forgotten within months. Let's rewind to understand how we even got here. Becky Lynch had returned at SummerSlam 2021 after over a year away following the birth of her daughter. She came back as a completely different character, no longer the man we knew and loved, but instead Big Time Becks, an arrogant, self-absorbed champion who turned heel and immediately defeated Bianca Belair in 26 seconds to capture the SmackDown Women's Championship. This was controversial, sure, but it was brilliant character work. Becky reinvented herself, showed a darker edge, and proved she could dominate as a villain just as effectively as she inspired as a hero. She eventually moved to Raw with the championship, defending it successfully against everyone in her path. Becky had rebuilt the prestige of the title through her work, her promos, and her ability to make every feud feel important. Say what you want about her heel persona, but the woman showed up every single week and delivered. The Raw Women's Championship meant something because Becky Lynch held it. Now here's the critical question I need you to answer in the comments. Do you think Becky Lynch's heel run from 2021 to 2022 was better or worse than her original The Man character? Drop your thoughts below because this is where opinions get heated. Enter Liv Morgan. Look, I have nothing personal against Liv. She's talented, she works hard, and she clearly has passion for the business. But let's be brutally honest about where she was in her career at this point. Liv had been spinning her wheels in WWE for years. She was part of the Riot Squad, which was disbanded and reformed more times than anyone can count. She had some momentum in 2021 but could never quite break through to that next level. Her character work was inconsistent, her in-ring performances were hit or miss, and most importantly, she had done nothing to earn a championship match at this level. The build-up to Day 1 was practically non-existent. Liv won a number 1 contenders match on Raw, a match that felt thrown together at the last minute because WWE needed someone, anyone, to challenge Becky. There was no long-term storytelling, no emotional investment, no real reason why this was the moment for Liv Morgan. It felt like WWE creative threw darts at a board and Liv's name got hit. Compare this to how championship matches used to be built: months of storytelling, personal rivalries, blood, sweat, and tears invested in making you care about the outcome. This had none of that, but WWE sold it anyway. They tried to package Liv as the ultimate underdog, the girl who never gave up, who kept fighting despite setbacks, who deserved this opportunity. The problem? In wrestling, deserving an opportunity means nothing if the story hasn't been properly told. Daniel Bryan deserved his WrestleMania moment because we watched him struggle for years. Kofi Kingston deserved his WWE Championship because we lived through his journey. Liv Morgan deserved this match because she won one number 1 contenders match 2 weeks prior. Give me a break. The match itself started with all the energy you'd expect from a championship bout on a major show. The Atlanta crowd was hot, ready to see if Liv could pull off the impossible. Becky came out with all the arrogance of a fighting champion, dismissing Liv before the bell even rang. This was vintage heel champion work: make the challenger look like they don't belong, then reluctantly give them their shot. The early portions of the match followed a predictable formula. Becky dominated, showcasing her technical superiority and experience advantage. She wasn't just beating Liv, she was toying with her, proving the point that there were levels to this game and Liv was playing in a league she didn't belong in. Becky hit her signature moves with precision, leg drops, exploders, submissions, attempts that demonstrated her evolution as a wrestler. This wasn't the scrappy underdog Becky from her rise to fame, this was a calculating veteran who knew exactly how to dismantle an opponent. Here's another question for the comments: what's your favorite Becky Lynch finishing move, the manhandle slam or the disarm her? Let me know below. But then something interesting happened. Liv started fighting back. Not just fighting back, she started matching Becky move for move. Suddenly, this woman who had been presented as a clear underdog was going toe-to-toe with one of the most dominant champions in recent memory. This is where the booking started to crack. There's a difference between an underdog comeback and completely no-selling the champion's offense. Liv was absorbing punishment that should have ended the match 3 times over but kept popping back up like she had superhuman recovery abilities. The crowd began to rally behind Liv, and you could feel the momentum shifting. WWE does this thing where they believe crowd noise can substitute for proper storytelling, and this match was a perfect example. Sure, the fans were cheering for Liv, but was it because they were invested in her story specifically, or because WWE has conditioned audiences to cheer for whoever is positioned as the underdog regardless of context? I'd argue it's the latter. As the match progressed into its middle stages, both women began trading signature moves and near falls. Becky hit a manhandle slam, Liv kicked out at 2. Liv connected with her step-up enziguri, Becky barely survived. The referee counts kept getting to 2.9, building that false drama that modern WWE relies so heavily on. But here's the problem with this structure: when everything is a near fall, nothing feels important. The match became a video game of who could hit their finisher at the right moment rather than a genuine athletic contest with stakes and consequences. Becky locked in the disarm her, a devastating submission that has forced countless opponents to tap out. The commentary team sold it like Liv's arm was about to be ripped from its socket. Liv screamed, reached for the ropes, and the crowd was on their feet. This should have been the moment the champion retains, proves her dominance, and moves on to the next challenger. But instead, Liv somehow powered out, transitioned into a roll-up attempt, and the match continued. A roll-up attempt after being in a devastating submission for nearly a minute. The same submission that has ended matches against Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, and countless others. But Liv? She just powered through like it was a minor inconvenience. The finishing sequence is where this match goes from questionable booking to absolutely insulting. After 23 minutes of back-and-forth action, Liv caught Becky with her Oblivion DDT. The crowd exploded as the referee counted, 1, 2, 3. New champion. Liv Morgan had done the impossible. Confetti fell from the ceiling, the commentary team lost their minds, and Liv celebrated like she had just won the lottery. But let me ask you something: did that finish make any sense from a storytelling perspective? Becky Lynch, who had been presented as this calculating, dominant champion for months, got pinned clean by a single finisher from someone who hadn't been built up as a legitimate threat. There was no interference, no shenanigans, no story-based reason for the champion to lose. Just one DDT and boom, the reign is over. Compare this to how championship changes used to mean something. When Stone Cold beat Shawn Michaels, there was months of build and story behind it. When The Rock lost to Mankind, it was the culmination of a deeply personal feud with Mr. McMahon pulling the strings. This was we need a feel-good moment for day one, so let's put the title on Liv. Drop a comment below and tell me, was Liv Morgan's championship win at day one earned or was it pure sympathy booking? I want to hear both sides on this one. The aftermath of this match exposed just how damaging this decision was. Liv's championship reign lasted until Money in the Bank, 6 months of absolutely nothing memorable. Her defenses were forgettable, her feuds lacked heat, and the title felt like an accessory rather than the most important prize in women's wrestling. Meanwhile, Becky was shuffled into other programs, her momentum completely destroyed by this loss. The woman who had carried the division on her back was sacrificed for a moment that WWE thought would create a new star, but instead created a champion who wasn't ready for that position. This is the fundamental problem with modern WWE booking. They prioritize moments over stories. They want viral clips and social media engagement rather than building sustainable, long-term stars. Liv winning the title got WWE some positive press for a few days, generated some nice headlines about an underdog story, and then what? 6 months later, everyone had moved on. Liv had lost the title in equally forgettable fashion, and the Raw Women's Championship had been devalued because it had been treated as a prop in someone else's character development rather than the ultimate prize that women compete their entire careers to hold. Let's talk about what this match represented for both women's legacies. For Becky, it was a black mark on an otherwise incredible career. She's a multi-time champion, a WrestleMania main eventer, and one of the biggest stars WWE has produced in the last decade. But this loss made her look weak, made her look foolish, and worst of all, made her look like she couldn't back up all her big talk as a heel champion. The entire point of her character was that she was better than everyone else, that she could talk the talk and walk the walk. Having her lose clean to someone who hadn't been established as a credible threat undermined everything they had built with her character for 6 months. For Liv, this match should have been her coronation, the moment she finally broke through to superstardom. Instead, it became an asterisk, the time she won a championship she wasn't ready for in a match that wasn't properly built. Through no fault of her own, Liv became a symbol of everything wrong with short-term booking. She won the title, but she didn't truly earn it in the eyes of hardcore fans. That's not fair to her as a performer, but it's the reality of what happens when you rush storytelling for a cheap pop. The wrestling business has always been built on creating stars through proper elevation and protection. You don't just hand someone a championship and hope they figure it out. You build them up through victories, through strong performances, through stories that make the audience invest in their journey. Liv had potential, but she needed more time, more development, and more importantly, a proper story that justified this moment. Instead, WWE took a shortcut, and both Becky and Liv paid the price for it. Here's what really makes this match controversial in hindsight. WWE had multiple other options available that would have made more sense. Charlotte Flair was on SmackDown but could have been moved. Alexa Bliss was available and had history with Becky. Rhea Ripley was emerging as a major star. Any of these women would have been more credible threats to Becky's title and could have produced a championship change that felt earned rather than given. But WWE chose Liv because they wanted a specific type of feel-good story. Consequences be damned. The match also highlighted a bigger problem with how WWE books heel champions. They spend months building them up as dominant, unstoppable forces, then have them lose to the first credible challenger in a clean finish. What's the point of the dominance if it can be ended so easily? Heel champions should be weasels who find ways to retain through clever tactics, creating heat and making the eventual face victory even more satisfying. Or they should be monsters who require multiple opponents to finally take down. Becky was booked as dominant but lost like a generic mid-card champion. It was the worst of both worlds. Think about this for a moment and comment below. Would this match have been better if Becky retained and Liv had to chase the title for several more months? Sometimes the journey is more important than the destination, and maybe Liv's character would have been stronger if she had to overcome multiple defeats before finally capturing gold. From an in-ring perspective, the match itself was actually quite good. Both women worked hard, the pacing was solid, and they told a coherent story within the confines of what they were given. The problem wasn't the wrestling, it was everything around the wrestling. The lack of build, the questionable finish, and the long-term implications all overshadowed what was actually decent work between the ropes. This is the frustrating reality of modern WWE. The talent is there, the ability is there, but the booking decisions often undermine the hard work these performers put in. Becky sold for Liv effectively, making her offense look devastating when it needed to. Liv brought the fire and intensity you'd expect from someone fighting for the biggest opportunity of their career. The near falls were believable in the moment, and the crowd was into the action throughout. If this match had occurred after 6 months of proper build, with Liv racking up victories and establishing herself as a legitimate contender, it could have been a classic. Instead, it's remembered as a booking mistake that served neither woman's career. The broader implication of this match extends beyond just Becky and Liv. It sent a message to the entire women's division that championship reigns don't matter, that months of dominance can be ended on a whim, and that proper storytelling is secondary to creating viral moments. When wrestlers see that pattern, it affects how they approach their characters and their work. Why invest deeply in a character arc when WWE might change direction next week based on social media reactions? This match also represents a missed opportunity to elevate multiple women instead of just trying to create one moment. Imagine if WWE had booked a tournament to determine Becky's challenger, showcasing the entire division and building multiple potential contenders along the way. The tournament winner, whether Liv or someone else, would have a legitimate claim to the title shot, the division would feel deeper and more competitive, and the eventual championship match would carry so much more weight. but that requires long-term planning and patience, two things modern WWE often lacks. Let me hit you with this question: do you think WWE relies too much on surprise title changes rather than building satisfying long-term stories? Sound off in the comments. The commentary during this match tried desperately to sell Liv as a legitimate threat, but you could hear the stretch in their voices. They kept referencing her never-give-up attitude and her heart of a champion, but those are just words without substance behind them. Great commentary enhances the story being told in the ring. It doesn't try to create a story that doesn't exist. Michael Cole and Corey Graves did their professional best, but even they couldn't mask the fact that this match was built on a foundation of rushed booking. The post-match celebration was genuinely emotional. Liv was in tears, the crowd was celebrating, and for that one moment, it felt special. But wrestling isn't about one moment, it's about the journey to that moment and what comes after. The journey was rushed, and what came after was forgettable. That's the legacy of WWE Day 1 2022, a show that prioritized the instant gratification of a surprise title change over the lasting satisfaction of proper storytelling. Looking back now, years later, it's clear that this match didn't create the long-term star WWE hoped it would. Liv had her moment, lost the title, and has continued to be a solid mid-card performer who occasionally gets elevated for specific programs. There's nothing wrong with that career trajectory, but it's not what you'd expect from someone who was positioned as good enough to defeat Becky Lynch clean for a major championship. The match proved that you can't manufacture main event stars through shortcuts, you have to build them properly over time. Becky, to her credit, recovered from this setback and eventually returned to being one of WWE's top stars. But this loss was a speed bump that didn't need to exist, a moment of questionable booking that served no long-term purpose. Champions should lose their titles in ways that feel meaningful, either to pass the torch to the next generation in a proper story or to set up a future rematch and rivalry. This did neither. It was just a title change for the sake of having a title change. The truth about this match that nobody wants to admit is that it was booked for people who don't regularly watch wrestling. It was designed for casual fans who might tune in once a year, see an underdog story, feel good about it, and then move on. But wrestling companies should be booking for their dedicated fans first, the people who watch every week, buy merchandise, and actually care about continuity and storytelling. When you prioritize casual viewers over hardcore fans, you create moments like this that feel hollow to anyone paying attention. So here's my final question for you: should WWE prioritize creating viral moments for casual fans or telling satisfying long-term stories for dedicated fans? This is the fundamental question about modern wrestling, and I want to hear where you stand. Drop your answer in the comments. The WWE Day 1 2022 Raw Women's Championship match between Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan will be remembered, but probably not for the reasons WWE intended. It's a cautionary tale about rushed booking, unearned championship changes, and the danger of prioritizing moments over stories. Both women deserved better. Becky deserved to lose her title in a meaningful way that elevated her next challenger, and Liv deserved to win a championship after a proper build that made the victory feel earned rather than given. This match perfectly encapsulates everything frustrating about modern WWE: incredible talent working hard to execute a plan that was fundamentally flawed from the start. The wrestling was good, the effort was there, but the story wasn't, and in professional wrestling, story is everything. You can have the greatest athletes in the world performing the most spectacular moves, but without proper context and build, it's just gymnastics. Wrestling needs meaning, needs stakes, needs stories that make you care about who wins and who loses. The real tragedy is that this match could have been so much more. With proper build, with better storytelling, with more time invested in making Liv a credible threat, this could have been a genuine feel-good moment that created a new star and gave Becky a meaningful loss to fuel her next chapter. Instead, it's remembered as a booking mistake that satisfied no one in the long run. If you made it this far, I want to hear from you. Was I too harsh on this match? Am I completely wrong about Liv deserving her moment? Do you think Becky's heel run was actually terrible and this was the right way to end it? Comment below and let's have a real discussion about this, because this match represents something bigger than just one title change. It represents a philosophy of wrestling booking that either resonates with you or drives you crazy. And before you go, let me know what match you want me to break down next. Should I tackle more controversial championship changes? Analyze other women's matches that divided the fanbase? You tell me what content you want to see on Wrestling Zone 1, and I'll deliver. The Becky Lynch vs. Liv Morgan match at WWE Day 1 2022 was booked for the moment, not for the story, and that's why it ultimately failed both women despite their best efforts. That's the truth that needs to be said, even if it's unpopular. Now get down in those comments and tell me if I'm right or if I'm completely off base, because this discussion is just getting started.